Hey friends, it's Nikki. Welcome if you're new here and welcome back if you're returning. Today's episode is all Valentine DIYs. Let's jump right in. All right, I'm starting with this piece of wood that you can find at the Dollar Tree. And because it's raw wood, I'm going to mist it, and that's going to help me move this antique wax around. I didn't have any baby wipes, so I'm just using one of my Viva paper towels. Those are almost like a towel. They're so strong and they work well for things like this because I can just hang on to this for my next project if I want. But they are heavy duty, and I'm going to make sure to go over the whole thing. And then this beautiful cardstock, I'm going to use the pretty cherub and the Be My Valentine. I love that typography that's used in that. And so I separated the pieces, and I want this to look old. So I'm going to rough it up a little bit on the edges with my scissors as I'm doing here. And then I'm going to crumple it up real good. And later I'm going to go in with some distress ink. But for now, I'm going to frame in my little cherub, and this frame I used in a previous DIY, and I just popped that picture out, and I'm going to put this one in and just trimming it to fit and then gluing it using a little Gorilla Hot Glue. So just so you know, I'm not using everything that you see here. I do switch things up quite a bit. But before I place my picture, I'm going to take this pretty vintage style lace and I'm going to wrap it around the whole thing and cutting it off in the back. And I found this on Temu last year. It's just so pretty. They have the prettiest laces and accessories. I actually haven't shopped there in a very long time. But if you're looking for inexpensive laces, they do have a lot, although I'm not sure how expensive shipping is. But then I glued my picture down, and this is going to be like a mixed media project. It comes out looking so cute. And I'm distressing my tag with Tim Holtz Distress Ink in the color Walnut Stain. And I'm not going to glue it down just yet. And you can probably see that resin piece in the background. I don't end up using that either. I was contemplating, but no. So these little roses I found at Hobby Lobby. I got them 40% off, and I'm going to take this vintage style ribbon and just wrap it all the way around what would be the stem. I want it to look more realistic and not, see the wires hanging. So then I made a little teensy tiny bow and glued that to the bottom of the roses, and then just figuring out placement. So this is essentially where I decide to put my Be My Valentine, right under the roses, and that looks super cute. And then these little snowmen I got at Goodwill, and I'm going to glue those right to the bottom. That way this can stand up. And then I'm going to take this distress ink spray, and I just held it over the trash can and sprayed the feet. And a little bit got on the sign, and that's fine. I actually really like it, so I put some on my finger and just put it around the edges and blended it in. But that's it for this one. I think it is so pretty. And I love the laces and the details in the resin and the florals. I just love this so much. Let me know what you think of this. All right, using that same paper, we're going to cut the little cherubs out the side here. And I have these wooden tags, and these came in a box from Amazon that I got a bunch of assorted wooden pieces that I've been using a lot for my Valentine's Day projects. So I'm going to put some of my glue stick on one side of my tags and then set my little cherub right over the top there and burnish it real good and let it dry before going in, and I'm gonna trim up the sides and sand them off. This is a real quick and easy project. You could even do these with kiddos, but you could add them to any gifts or hang them off a tree as an ornament or just about anything. But I had to poke my hole back open again because my paper covered it up, just using my awl tool. And I'm going to distress them as I distress everything. And I'm using the color Vintage Photo by Tim Holtz. And this adds just such a nice glow to anything. And of course, you could totally skip this step if you don't like to distress stuff, but I have to distress everything in my life. Then I went over them all with some Paint Couture's Extreme Garden Satin, and this just seals everything in and adds a nice soft little glow to them, and it also helps blend that distress ink and just kind of makes it look more even. And then I added some twine and some assorted beads, and that's it for these. I think they're just so cute. Let me know what you think of this one. For this one, I started by folding a piece of paper in half and drawing a half of a heart. I cut that out and opened it up and used it as my template. So next, I pulled out some corrugated cardboard from my stash and cut 2 heart shapes using that template, and I trimmed them up so they were nice and even, and I'm going to save the leftover cardboard for our next project. I also found this oval embroidery hoop at Goodwill and this big bundle of burlap, and I placed the burlap into the hoop and tightened it down. And then to remove the excess, a little tip I wanted to share is use the tip of your scissors. It works really well. It helps you keep from accidentally cutting your embroidery hoop. And then after that, I burned off all the little fuzzies with my little torch here. You can definitely skip this step if you want, but I like the cleaner look that it gives, and I love that, like the subtle distressing that it adds. Now I'm going to paint my hearts, and I'm starting by dry brushing and slowly building up the color. I don't want these to be heavily coated. I really want the cardboard to show through. And I'm using Waverly's chalk paint in the color Ballet Slipper and a chippy brush. So after I dip into the paint, I offload most of it and then lightly brush over the heart, building the color up gradually until it looks right to my eye. And these dried really fast. Once I was done painting, I just went over them real quickly with my embossing gun just for like a few seconds. And since the paint layer is so light and not overly wet, I was able to go right in with Tim Holtz Distress Ink. And I focused on the edges, adding just a little extra depth and texture while keeping things soft. And then this burlap ribbon I found in my stash. I've had this for so long and it hasn't even been used. I was so happy to take this out today. So as you can see, I'm gluing it along the front center of the heart and then wrapping it around the back. And I did that to both of them. And then I wanted some buttons, and I don't like the look of buttons without thread through them. So I just threaded them off with this really thin twine, and then I glued them to each side of my heart. Now I'm going to go all along the backs of my hearts with some Gorilla Hot Glue, and these stick really well. I didn't have to go all crazy with the hot glue. I just went all along the sides of each heart, and while my glue's still warm, I flipped my hoop over and pressed the burlap into the hearts, and I could feel a little bit of the warmth from the glue without pushing the glue through the burlap and, making the back messy. This ribbon is another thing that I've had in my stash that I've been wanting to use for so long. I got this on Temu, and as you can see here, I'm gluing it all around the sides of my hoop. And just cutting it off at the top. And then this Greenery I got at Hobby Lobby. It's actually my favorite Greenery. I get it every year because I use it so much, and I'm just separating it and gluing it along the top. These look so good at the top of carrots. And then these solo wood flowers, I think that's what they're called. Gluing those right on top. And I did add some Spanish moss. I'm sorry, I totally forgot to turn the camera on for that, but that's what the roses are sitting on. I love this, guys. I just love, love, love it so, so much. Oh, I think this is my favorite DIY that I've made in a long time. Let me know what you think of this one. Using the same heart template from earlier, I trimmed it down a bit to create a smaller heart. Then, using the same corrugated cardboard, I cut a total of 6 hearts. And I didn't mention earlier, but the discoloration you see on the cardboard is just from using it as a surface when I sprayed clear coat on another project. Nothing to worry about there. I just thought I'd mention that. I glued the hearts back to back, keeping the corrugated side facing outward, which gave me a total of 3 hearts. Next, I'm using this cardstock that I picked up at Hobby Lobby, and I'm going to start by tearing one edge. This is going to run right along the center of the heart, and I'm a little out of frame here, I'm sorry, but once I have it torn, I run the cardstock through my paper crimper so it has that same corrugated look. And then I'm going to do a bit of tearing and adjusting until I like how it looks, and then trim it down so it fits my heart perfectly. And after that, I went back in with some Tim Holtz Distress ink in the color Walnut Stain. I focused on distressing all the torn edges just to soften them a little bit, and then I glued everything down to the heart. And then to finish it off, I mixed some white chalk paint in with some water and took my fan brush and added some flecks all over the top. And then I took Tim Holtz Distress Ink sprays, and this one is Vintage Photo, and I sprayed all over my hearts with this, and it just adds like almost like a shimmer to them, and I just think that's so pretty, like a gold shimmer. And then I wrapped some twine around each one of them like 3 times and then tied it off to a bow. And the same roses that we used earlier, I'm using on these, and I glued one right over the top of each bow, and this is what they look like. And of course I have to burn off some of the little hairs from the twine. I just think it looks so much cleaner, and it does add to the distressed vintage look that I like so much. And then I add a little bit of glue to the sides just to make sure that twine didn't move around. And then there's a small opening at the bottom. It was there on purpose because we're putting a skewer stick into each one of them and adding a little bit of hot glue and this little clamp to keep it in place. And I styled it with one of the tags that we used earlier and some roses, and I think this came out so pretty. All right, on to our last project. I'm using a Dollar Tree cutting board for this one and Fusion's mineral paint in the color Peony. And I'm going to do 2 coats on this. I'm going to apologize right now for it being so dark. I was trying to be festive and I had no idea that that red wrapping paper would make things so dark. But at the time, it was a good idea. These letters you can find at Hobby Lobby. This is the first time I've actually seen them at my Hobby Lobby, so of course I had to get a couple bags. And I'm writing out, P.S. I love you, and using some candy apple red to paint my letters. And then I took these diamonds I got on Amazon, and I'm going to go over the whole heart and just cover it with these little faux diamonds. Now, mine came with this little tool, and I'm telling you, it makes all the difference trying to get those little diamonds onto my project. So, if you know you've worked with these and you don't have one of these tools, you definitely should order one. I think you can get them for like a few dollars on Amazon. And I'm taking some Tite Bond Quick and Thick, and that's how I'm adhering them onto my cutting board. And that piece of tape you see there is just trying to help me place them evenly. I'm going to take this lace, and I've used this a lot lately in my projects. I got this on Temu, and I'm going to have this so it's draping down from the corner and just looking all elegant and pretty. And then this heart, I have a whole bunch of these I've been using this year, and these little flowers. I got these on Temu too. That bag is filled. I only paid, I think, $3 for them. So I'm covering the whole heart with these flowers, just using some hot glue. And then I'm going to glue that right above the letters PS. I'm going to add a little bow, and I'm going to glue that right up above the lace there in the left-hand corner. And I'm going to tack down the tails. And of course, I'm going to distress it a little bit, not too much, just a little bit. And I'm going to take these little pearl beads. They have an adhesive backing. I think these came from the Dollar Tree. I haven't used these before, but they're real sticky. You don't need to have or add any extra glue to your surface. These stick real nice, and I'm going to go all along the sides. And off camera, I had used those little diamonds as a periods and PS, but I didn't like how that looked, so I used those same little pearls for that instead. And that completes this project. I think it's such a sweet little piece for Valentine's Day. You could hang it on a wall or style it as a shelf sitter. And here's a quick recap of the other projects that we made today. And if you've been here through the whole video, thank you so much for watching. I truly hope something in today's projects inspired you. And if you're new here and enjoying and liking what you're seeing, I'd love for you to subscribe and leave me a comment down below. I always love hearing from you guys. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. Until the next one, bye.